No Wonder White Stains, a short poetic novella in 3 parts. So you're not from here, Our Lady concludes with this witticism, her gentle quip hovering around protectively. Of course not, something in the demeanour. Indeed? And what about the anger I should feel, the loss, the demerit, despite the quaint pulchritude of all things foreign? Isn't your name a palindrome, I dare ask? Certainty comes to her as a gift, not as a sacrifice, though she acknowledges a debt. I see she could almost kneel like some troubled knight-at-arms. It's all quite different here, isn't it? No wonder white stains. Her words again. But what a discordant piece of work she is now, unexpectedly keeping her chin up. I long for some ingenuous feat, the cooing of a blackbird, muffled footsteps. Our serene townscape is a lie. My fidgeting reveals a simple truth: we need a carpet. We don't even own a cat. I could walk to the payphone and ask that Eve woman, the first I ever met in this country, for the number of a charity shop. This would indeed be a preferment, something on which we could stand, barefoot, and purrs. If ever a feline and gracious conqueror. No wonder white stains on your kiss curl side, where the temple's skin wrinkles wearily. It's the slanting light of dawn, the gift of our bad angel. Whatever grief I exhale in my painless slumber is to be shared. Should I be cursed and you pitied? Or must it be the other way round? If there is anything you should know, it must be this. When you cheat, Domina Mea, you merely plagiarize somebody else's lie. No wonder white stains your wax-like cheek. Apropos of beauty, remember the daffodils on the wallpaper of our hotel room in Saratoga Springs? We wanted fame, not of the vainglorious kind, obviously, preferably the equable soothing that thrives in childhood's birth when pubescence is moored with ropes of unusual strength. That variety of acclaim, kind and collected. Sunday again. Our very first year, we go rowing. The fleecy clouds dance upon the still water when I boat the oars. There's a misstated pledge hiding somewhere, a delusion, a fancy, the embellishment of something that never was. At least not in Saratoga Springs, where fabrication wasn't allowed. We're left with torn tufts, the wisp of a hope. And this is now, alas. Pampered was their favourite word, remember? How much they resented the plunder and the spoil. Thing is, we hunted and preyed cunningly, all finesse and no trickery. Every night I delved into your soul, ab oculis, and fondled sweet darkness, eternal dusk, brotherly cloak. Deep in the suburban earth, where the pale roots of Christmas trees suck the winter rain's cerulean waters, lies a sphinx. The beast will not let go, bending under the weight of her punishing cargo. It seems I'm lying there as well, stern and immature in the rather silly shape of a spear. We're not quite used to this, and our longing for the familiar now betrays us under many guises. some trying and inept, like this one, some the size of a blessing. I delved again the summer before last, and it struck me then once more how darkness came to the fore with such unsparing fortitude. Darkness, sour darkness, the eclipse of all thoughts, of which there are, mind you, a multitude. Eve knows how to shut herself in ladylike when required. Say, typical, when we feign an excuse. She curses us then for not being too helpful, for coyness and affectation, her eyes opening wide in a dash, her eyelids soon enough lowered as if under some unbearable pain of a kind the righteous should be civil enough to hide. She does not know of Saratoga, what happened there. The fury on the faces, the twisted half-smiles, the grief in great supply. And then, at last, the hunt. Mornings lying ahead, I often think of them, and wonder how long it can last before they find us out. Everyone knew about Fred Astaire and his many pairs of shoes, the two-tone ones and the gillies. That was easy and light-hearted, so why not a disclosure? The tattletales, parochial and earnest, will win by degrees, with that clever wheeze, hints first, shrewd and crafted, then foul words, ever-expanding circles, our reputation spoiled, some obnoxious turmoil, and then, yes, the withering fizz of gossip that never dies. We're family, Mother. We're naturalists, provincial twins. Life's clatter, how could that bother us? Since life buds and grows so strong in our hearts, we blush and laugh and run madly, oblivious of the landlady. We're family, Mother. We're naturalists. With a twist. I'm unanimous about that. Ours is love in a pure state, stripped of all worldly appendages, austere. It's love unspoiled, without the sugar coating of pretense to relevance, to life down here, to life beyond, to whatever. You speak strangely to me, and with such discipline. I'm left all alone to nurse the bruises of our bodies' clash. And then, the coldness of your affection. What should I do with it when I need you so fearfully? You must know why the room in Saratoga reminded you of Egypt, because of those daffodils Father shed on the quilt of your bed in Zamalek, as a good coat sheds water on rainy days after an afternoon stroll on the ship's upper deck. He stared at you blankly. Just off the plane was he, the flight from home delayed, his smile wearing thin, Manhattan's sticky August dust still smearing the fingertips, and his beautiful lips full and prying. Oh, they claimed you. These cares float in my mind, lest they sink. From that cat, the perfunctory flowers and the fancy footwear, they do sink, though, from time to time, and I let them drown. I grow numb, but my vessel will not break. Just the opposite, for it is freed from the overflow, so that I may start afresh, unfettered. And when I do, with no travail in sight, my new, unstudied soul finds its own clear path. It is wide open and true and undefiled, and leads me where Ariel, the flower child, is biding his time for me. No wonder white stains a cheek and a temple. What are these but finite contraptions on a par with an arm or a leg or an ear, adrift in the murk of our room? What I mean is, any sheen or glow, any gift from the sun outside the window smears and trumps whatever was bereft of light anyway. Our bodies, that is, or parts thereof, before one of us kindly drew the shades. Ages ago, we weren't so lonely. And far apart. We lulled each other to sleep and sneered at the morning news. I with elbows crossed on the railing, yours below, apart on the arms of the settee. The New York Times, the Herald, a crumpled issue of the Village Voice, unlikely breakfast fruits I willingly brushed aside. My notebook I opened on that day of the daffodils, and that was enough to become quite another, to even be somebody. A virgin queen, a collier's daughter, a one-eyed alley cat, a tropic beauty, it didn't matter. As long as you and Daddy-O cared to look at me and rejoiced and glowed with pride à l'unisson in broad daylight. Slain, pain, hurts, schmerz, douleur, sauveur. I scribbled them, funny words, in my book for protection, because words need a haven to recover from fear's insulting dominion. Ah, that sphinx in the basement, suckled with poison, Eve's warped flattery, and now you, stone hard. Why doesn't she select any shape but this silly one with folded wings and consign her vexed puzzles to oblivion? And why doesn't Eve parley with herself? And why don't you mellow a bit? Why don't you ripen? Why don't you answer? Lady Eve concluded, as perforce you remember, with that noxious quip about demeanour, but the closure was akin to a creation. Regardless, there was not a flutter as we watched, unruffled, the incipient unfolding of the bare, final truth that would be ours. I pray for soullessness. Either that or something diminutive. A mind will do. I even wish I were a thing sometimes, a fly-speck spot, and would alight on the muddy dome of the earth, freed from the clutch of my sobs. Can a body contract with unnatural fears? Hey, no! Here was a chance I dared not overlook. I was rowing again the other day, yet another Sunday. The skies were clear, the month of May was just a week away, unpolished yet brave and foolhardy, with clean promises and sweet unspoiled scents, and the grass was thick already on gentle slopes of a wonderful and rapturous green. And I, sexless, released from the grip of appetites impeccable, revelled in your conversation. 'Twas short and sweet, but with a few rather deep furrows here and there, for my body to hide and grow a new soul, yet as a wild rose bush climbs profusely on a dry stone wall to blossom under the edge of a protective roof. There I was, all forearms and thighs and shoulders, and the breath of your words whispered its way into me and confused me, and yet played fair with me and summoned me to my human fate and duty. such unkind memories, such counterfeit promises. I went for a swim for a change, for the sake of the strokes. I was so good at butterfly in Alexandria. The azure sea, shorn of waves, undisturbed, pellucid, made it easy. The harmless seabed at a safe distance was the Arab boys' disgraces' holy food. They crouched on the thin white sand, not daring to wave a hand, nestled against one another, the tallest one hunched roguishly on his own. Fools, ungrateful, afraid of drowning in such divine waters. Found the key, made a copy, hid number 2 inside the shoe no one will ever poke into. For such are members of the bourgeoisie, say Eve and Mother, her lessee, they don't always think straight, often give in to the false and trite. Let the die be cast, and the one true road taken to wherever Eve's pestering leads, a distant shore, a moorland, a flowery slope forsaken, where the lonely dream and feed, and life's marrow wilts not, so we can still be taught a thing or two. Let our ground be firm, and our hopes, whole and unscathed, make their pedestrian way to a haven unsoiled and indulgent, where our good companions will be marshalled. Fresh horses we need, fresh horses we shall have, fire-breathing steeds, and then, after the race, a little pond to quench our thirst, the leafy shade of bur oaks, does unfazed resting on the turf, a budding trunk bearing a child's anxious curve. Opening the chest, my darling Ariel, brought about such wanton joy that the release spoilt the tracks of my tears, so I could offer a clean face to the stern mirror of my soul. There they were, the knitted pouch full of white Egyptian sand, and the herbarium's lean legacy, one plain dried daffodil. You know, Daddy wasn't too happy to sit with her on the settee. He deemed such gatherings ludicrous. When he did nevertheless oblige, I watched from above, in sheer puzzlement, courtly love's patient venom deter them both from trespassing. A coy and uptight duet they were, unable to whet or stir love's angelic lust, and I, once a daughter, now and again a son, boyish sneakers, high-heel slippers, and back, unfailingly their air apparent, witness the stillborn quivers and the kindness of the weak that withers on boredom's lethal shores. I remember the day you were born. Walking to your house, 3 blocks away, on a peaceful, wintry day. White lilies in a vase, the anteroom full of their silent smell, wicker chairs on which to sit, my heart to yours already knit, as I looked at your sleepy head and knew I wouldn't be misled. A spear? What nonsense! Such an absurd praise. The warrior in me was never very brave. A coward, an alarmist, I shrink from minute pains, those constant strains that clasp the weak. My excuse has always been the same, although I know you judged it lame for being way too impersonal, common, rude, universal. Trafficking things temporal runs deep in our nature. The spiritual thriving so far beyond our ken that we gasp in fright at true kindness and elfin kisses sweet. Those imperfect shadows of a loftier benevolence. So, what should we do with the unworldly? The mere hope of so much as a glimpse of it is a forfeit, each secret peak a simony. And that Mother just could never see. Your large, strong hands, Ariel, so studious and considerate. The purple blood in each meandering vein flows back not to the heart where it would clog, but to the brain where it'll feed. Your one bowl of kisses. My mouth nearly misses each time we go for a walk, beating the path impatiently. But Holy Spring, the true death of winter, tells me how to do it. Say we sit under a tree or rest against a fence. My head will bend a little. My eyes will close a little. And my hips will heave a little. But my lips blossom fully to win the fight. So that when we meet at last, and weak yet human perfection, the very best we have is reaped. I have a taste of those berries you picked on the way out, but did not bother to share. We laze away until the sun bleeds, and night's gentle cloak is spread out over the hillside. When the crows tell us it is time to go home, we comply with nature's rules that coerce us with chains of jewels. This much should be said. You rushed me-ward from the start, and I pushed off Ariel-ward, somewhat belatedly, I reckon. I was loitering still when we leaped the fence of the rose garden and saw the pale faces of the new dawns and gloire de Dijon, the scorching sunward bronze. And on that day, I remember, I wrote slain in the book, and then pain in the book. In that order, just so I wouldn't adjust to calf love. I refused it with all my strength. I bent and deviated to kill infatuations in consequence. Each curve, so wide it seemed the long path was straight after all, and time's tide was playing against me. I bent and deviated, and when I opened my eyes after so many twists, I found true love was so ingrained, partial and obstinate as it should be, and the creator of so many selves as jealousy and forgiveness take turns obligingly, that I could not fight it. Strength. It wasn't just in the hands. You were going to last. I mean, all of you. Body, mind, and soul. In spite of all the wear and hardship, the sheer will that would outstrip my modest hope for survival was fitted to that uphill task. And so you nipped the spite in the bud. Ah. Glorious Ariel. Fast, steady, imperial. Pliant enough to connive your way into safety, away from life's indignity. Ariel, Ariel. We were vexed once, pestered and harried. Where shall we be buried when our many selves are all of a piece, and love makes its peace with us? Tell me, in Saratoga Springs. That's where we want to stay, where we shall rest in peace. Fresh daffodils thrown on the stones, no letters, no cards, none of mine hair's post-its. That's where our teeny weeny bits must array, rather than cunningly fade away. You know how difficult it was to read from the curve on the trunk? Douleur, sauveur, were left for us to decipher. And these were no witticisms. I mean, provincials, nobodies, weren't quite satisfied. And now, I'll tell you why. It is so easy to think of a child as a thing of beauty when, lost in the wild, as fears and shadows mingle, the thing of beauty improves, as it were. Some empathy is forced on us, readers, and the little one, forlorn and single, destitute, craving anyone's affection, wins ours on the spot. A flute will be heard, and just as soon a brute, your local candy man, will smash it to pieces, and then the silence, just like ours, after the hunt. Was anything, life, hopes, regrets, the morrow, pliant or just beneficial? Neither. Not even attractive, not even okay. Everything outward and worldly, lips, a fragrance, symmetrical toes turning to mist, their slim heavenly share turning to stone, to fuss. Life perusing every incision, wedging the shutters open, the impertinent pinky probing, having a go. Life fishing for compliments, that is, and hope, hogging all the sweets. Pitiful. There was once a way, etc. A most familiar trope, a master one, whose work, plainly enough, is to belittle and arraign by way of irony. So, now it's the time to make amends. The amphitheatre's full, locals have left the cornfields, they've shut the barns and locked the tool sheds. The cows, the horny farhands, don't have a clue. They're all full of hate, of dry, deadly hate, so sweaty and gruff and red in the face one shouldn't bet on peace. War, of course, wanton war is our lot. The waymarked path to hell being so much fun to follow. And here's the number cruncher, ever ready to count the wounded and the dead, sitting by himself in the coffee stall, spent yet brave, with hooded eyes, manicured arithmetic's handyman. You can see his fountain pen and notepad and rosy post-its sitting there on the table. You know what's beyond dispute? I mean, really beyond dispute. No fussing about, no questions, no vacillations, two timing definitely out. Deceit. And yet, as one should expect in the case of repulse, the destitute stick to their guns. We ran, the three of us, a confused jumble of legs, thighs, bended torsi, Ma, Ariel and I, up the stairs. Oops, the attic not an option. So, about face, no choice, down the stairs, ditto. The basement not a fit base for a further action. A base space indeed, a hiding hole for worry guts. So, about face, in reverse, up the stairs again. And now, what's behind the door? The sort of ground floor back door you're so scared to push open, your heart's in your mouth at the very thought of pushing. Well, just about the quietest lane in Saratoga. A leafy glade of slate roofs and elaborate masonry and cute little front doors and polished copper door knockers and chintz drapes and valances charitable enough to give us a breather. That was before the stampede. It lasted a few lean minutes. I felt our fair hope recede as a gaggle of zealots, adrift, bug-eyed and frenzied, emerged where our lane cross-cuts. One beast, polycephalus, very much Callipygian, but still bent on the callous, when face to face, destruction, cried the quaint mob, as Ariel, stern without further ado, walked ahead and cast a spell, as Ma and I withdrew. Oh, divine, wordless slumber, smearing rage's balms on our foreheads with clean, adroit fingers, and not a breath, not a sound to trouble our weary souls. Oh, heavenly doze, ruffling the sleepy water, gently quivering, nuzzling up to our feet, our most faithful pup. We must stand up and be counted. After all the excessive cosseting, Mother Ariel and I, or perhaps Ariel, Mother and I, in whatever order, and we'll be one. Simple enough. I'm happy with that. Last on a list that isn't quite one anyway, more like a proper name, and the three of us on our way home. Same old dancey, over and over. Someone must choose the chosen, blast the blasted, coin the coined. No such thing as an idle wheel. Wasn't there something blunt in the hunt? Of course there was, to say the least, which means somebody blunted the blunted. I can hear Eve complaining once again about misnomers, sunk in grief with that lesser palindrome of hers she's so proud of, bitching the rent's due, but chin down now, and it makes me happy to see the kiss-curl side of your brow is free of the old sorrow, which tells us why and how it'll remain so tomorrow, because the flower child always rides a fresh horse. Strong Ariel, granted, but sweet and mild, all reined passion and fettered force. I was a tropic beauty once, at some school reunion, and created quite a stir, with peacock feathers no less, and fruit galore, pinned to a hat with no brim. Papier-mâché berries of different kinds, midget pineapples, and, well, you know, the odd cherry. My pretty nose wrinkling up with wild delight, got drunk on expensive port, couldn't really walk anyway in my backless colonial pumps, most becoming. Vintage Bergdorf Goodmans that gloved my feet, so someone gave me a ride home on a steed with a salt and pepper mane. Ariel did. So good at riding. So good at everything, I think. I wish I had easier lips, so that words would mean just what I mean, and everything I care to mouth would be transparent, and rhyme too, as in slain, pain, and slain sphinx, pain thinks, for pain cogitates indeed. It has a mind of its own that produces thoughts, so that when pain thinks, its thoughts jinx. Our bad, bad angel knows that. You bet he does. Lips, when long unkissed, are at a loss for words. Not mine, though. See how talkative I've become. They complained you pampered me. Evenings, mornings, afternoons, all the time. An eternity of pampering. Of the screwball variety is what made them cross. And why is that, I wonder? Jealousy, perhaps? Or a secret longing for infanticide? Either way, and if white stains, as they pretend, what about colours? What about purple and green? What about the slice of avocado Ma dropped on her lap on the white lilies day? What about being beaten black and blue and the ecchymoses closing in on plum and wine of a hue as quiet as that of fading roses? And if Matt the cat is on the mat and purrs and conquers, and if... and so on and so forth. There's no reason why, as love runs dry, the fickle and the shy, who'll be so happy fervour failed, should refrain from exultation. Quite the contrary, there's no denying the sheer force of resentment. As a rule, hurts rhymes with schmerz, and gullibly with baloney. Peevish dimwits outnumber the pure by far. Henceforth, treat rapture decently. See how the seas of passion run here. Pray for love's unsettled fate with all your might, for the young at heart rowing his sweetheart across, green and undefiled. Ma did just that in her own funny way. Got to first base, and indeed far afield, after a few toothless attempts. What's even curiouser is that I'm all the more grateful for her going at it gauchely. She didn't know what to say, and as silence got in the way, took her oath bravely. Well, what about it? What about the oath? Well, it pertained to both of us, Ariel, I, squarely, and ordained, among other far less adamant ordeals, that we should not avenge ourselves, or so much as fight. Squabble, maybe, bicker, but no adjudication, please, and we refrained accordingly. Ariel on his own, though really, neither of us nonplussed. What bliss to cling to mock twigs and to treat any flutter the wrong side of the aviary with good-natured neglect. Who are they, by the way, those prone to bar us from blithely vacillating, always prying and intruding, always on freedom's side? Mostly cheaters, all comfortable in an all-seater stadium for fools, which allows me to conclude the dead horse needs no further flogging. The palindromic lady. Does anyone care for her today? It seemed no one did any more when we first met her. She knew Robert, who knew Steve, who knew Barry, the chief consultant of Primetime Wizards, Tawdry Barry, ex-chess wunderkind from Toledo, Ohio. He was married, all right, to a somewhat unspecific bride, some plain girl with a plainer hairdo who he'd flown to Egypt with. And then future landlady happened to be his old flame from Flakes High. That's how we got her number upon departing Zamalek, mother looking a wreck, I pacing the deck. I saw her cleavage swallow the yellow post-it, and then she flexed her wrist over her décolleté. So nice of you, Barry. That'll be most helpful, I'm sure. And ascended to first-class quarters, from where your omniscient, omnipresent, omni-tutti, an unsullied witness to all the sublunar goings-on, like, say, older man hoping a real good-looking divorcee-to-be will get in touch with once broken-hearted sweetheart from Toledo, Ohio. Nothing is sacred anymore, supposedly. How convenient. And what's more, doggedly do-gooders persist. Could anything be done about that? Here is a suggestion. To improve their poise, have them walk up and down the stairs with a fat book on their head, say Proust or Gaddis. Secondly, there are other versions of the sacred which they just seem to ignore. E.g., it is a fact we wanted fame, Ma and I. Fame comes to the fore, that's pleonastic, but it must also taste sweet. Not by any other name, mind you, but qua fame, properly christened, period. Not unlike reeving a rope through a most tiny ring or hoop. Matt and the Blackbird. Keep that in mind as a title. Storyline, Ariel bet Matt would be faster, and won. Ma sat Ariel on her knees once when he was 6. She stroked his shoulder blades and ruffled his hair and pinched him in the ribs, playing with him in earnest. So Ariel went for a swim. "I'm no pet," he cried, immersing himself. "I'm not a thing," thereby introducing a brand new art of prophylaxis, dousing as clean-up, ascetic dip, Spartan flush. We rested in the sun, growing drowsy on the sand, all wet locks and soft brown limbs, as the cloak of sleep covered our callow heads with its soothing wool. Same day, but now the sun has set. A cloud in the shape of a shin guard floats above the roofs, fattens, distends, dwindles, and then dissolves. We thought it would rain, but it won't. Ariel wants yet more water. Cold raindrops, the outdoor taps dribbles, the Atlantic, anything. He pretends to be parched, stares at his toes, pretends again, so I fetch him a glass. His thirst is for words of praise. Persuasive and influential, for a voice to cheer him up, a glory that never seems to ripen. I comply, laugh, drop a curtsy, drink the glass, ruffle his hair, no complaints. So I'm kept to my promise. I tell her, "You shouldn't ruffle so. Don't you know about combs?" Ariel's locks. Only I can do it. Dusk as veil versus cocksure mornings, as if there were a natural difference between the two, rather than some artificially contrived matter of degree. To my mind, and Ariel's, a mischievous obliquity is at play here, a compound of poor teachings and botched attempts. Dusk is just someone else's break of day, with a thick coating of verdigris. Idle fears recede, unkind memories fade, their remnants bundled up to oblivion. They're eidolons by now, specks, notional whims. I'll make a note of it. We've walked this far. Who's singing in the dead of night? Funny Matt imitating the dead Bill, pretending everything is just as it should be. The blackbird sitting on a branch. The sphinx knitting his brow in the basement. The lilies quietly resting in their vase. The printed flowers on the wallpaper fading. And also the real ones thrown in a fit on Ma's Egyptian quilt. Still, Matt is speaking the truth by way of forgery. Imitation, though, is nowhere to be heard but in that bow. It's nothing but a simple bird's coo. Slow and gentle, helping us to slough off our pain's retinue. Time space. They're not things we might cherish for their own sake. Like, say, quilts or horses. They're quite on their own, a bit lonely, as if punished. Nothing sad though, nothing to complain about. We need them for yesteryear's blankets, the odd equine stampede, and so on and so forth. How else could we remember our beds and watch herds running wild unless there was a time for quilts and a space for escape? Ich wiederhole now, so neither of us forgets. I thought, geez, we won't make it. They'll get us first. I looked to the right, Ma. I looked to the left, Ariel. Ouch, either way. How else could I put it? Or anyone for that matter. Looked again, Ma, okay. Then Ariel a second time, ditto. Both still trying to be cute with me. No wonder the difference between them has always been fungible. Any other difference could replace it. Bigger, smaller, whatever. A different difference, such as counterfeit. Thing is, we reached it against all odds, no one quite daring to be the first. We reached as one the gentle pond, and then Ariel saw the oaks, the regal bur oaks right behind it. The deer, the female deer, at rest in their lustrous shade. Ma saw them first. Everything likewise at rest, in downright imitation of the does, the grass, that summer's silvery dust, etc. That was for the three of us to grasp. And this was no easy eyewash to divert our gaze from anything deemed truer for being ruthless and coarse, say, clouds. And what were these anyway, but some rather common fleece, torn apart, shredded, scattered above the July skies. I'll have none of that. Whatever the cost, won't settle for less. Universal stillness is going to be our three-tiered fate. Everything quiet, everything tame, everything